The toolbar in iOS 27 now has new enhancements. So let's look at the 4 new features added to the iOS toolbar in WWDC 26. We will begin with the new modifier, visibility priority, allowing you to set the visibility of some of the items that appear in the toolbar. We have the overflow menu closure to specify what goes into the overflow menu when there are too many items in the toolbar than it can accommodate. We have toolbarMinimizeBehavior, allowing you to set a behavior for the toolbar minimization. For example, when you have a scrolling content, you can specify what happens to the toolbar, whether to stay static, move up or down. You will see that shortly. Lastly, we now have a new modifier called topBarPinnedTrailing in iOS 27, allowing you to pin items to the trailing edge of a toolbar. As you have noticed, we have 6 items in the toolbar. So let's go ahead and add more and see what happens. I'm going to remove this comment. Before, we had 6 items showing in the toolbar. Now we have 5 items showing. We also have an overflow menu. Tapping the overflow menu does nothing. So once you have more items than the toolbar can accommodate, the iOS system automatically moves some of the toolbar items to the overflow menu. The X mark and the document symbol we just added have now replaced 2 of the symbols that were there already. In iOS 27, we can specify the number of toolbar items we want to remain visible, no matter how the number of items in the toolbar. We use the visibility priority modifier to achieve that. So if I scroll up a bit, all these symbols are contained in this toolbar item group. Once we add a visibility priority modifier to the toolbar item group, what we are now saying is we want all the symbols in this toolbar item group to remain visible. If I scroll down further, you have noticed here we have another toolbar item group. So once we specify the visibility priority as high for the first toolbar item group, some of the toolbar items in this group will move to the overflow menu. So let's remove the comment here. So the system has now moved some of the items to the overflow menu, but that is not tappable. What we need to do is to specify which items go to the overflow menu. So that is our second point. Let's remove this comment. I'm going to remove these and use them for the overflow menu. So I'm going to paste them here. So now, if we tap the overflow menu, you have seen we have the X mark and the document button. Let's move on to the third enhancement. That is using the toolbar minimize behavior. When you have, for example, a scrolling content, you can use the toolbar minimize behavior to determine whether the toolbar moves up or down or stays static. So let's remove the comment. Over here, we have set it to on scroll down. So once I scroll the content up, the toolbar disappears with it. And once I scroll down, it shows again. It disappears when I scroll the content up and appears when I scroll down. So let's change it and set it as scroll up. You can also set it as automatic or never. With never, when you scroll up and down, it will still remain static. Let's move on to the fourth toolbar enhancement in iOS 27. We can use the new modifier topBarPinnedTrailing to pin items to the trailing section of the toolbar. In our example, we still have the overflow menu at the trailing section. So by removing the comment, we are going to add the X mark instead to the trailing section. So we now have the X mark pinned to the trailing section of the toolbar. So that is everything I have for you in this video. I showed you how to set visibility priority using the new toolbar overflow menu closure to specify what goes into the overflow menu when there are too many items in the toolbar. We use the toolbar minimize behavior modifier to set a behavior for the toolbar and use the topBarPinnedTrailing modifier to pin items to the trailing section of the toolbar.